excited about hearing Sully today. Next week, I think, will be really awesome. Roland Sells and Ike Forte. I had two of the greatest running backs to play around the same era for the Razorbacks, and really excited to hear what they've got to say. I think that'll be fun. Make sure if you do the Twitter deal, you go to hashtag LRTDC. Make sure if you haven't joined, please do that for us if you can today. We appreciate all of our 50-yard line members. Make sure and text everybody that they can go to lrtouchdown.com to watch this live stream, to watch Sully. And don't forget to RSVP for Kelly every week. Do want to thank our major sponsors, Twin City Limousine, who I understand, Sully, picked you up in a Popeye picked you up in the Dallas, we call it the Dallas Cowboy limousine, limo bus or whatever. I guess you and a lot of other Channel 7 folks, right? Popeye is going to make a special presentation. Popeye's been preparing this for a month, I think. So we'll see what he's going to have for you later. Do want to thank 103.7 The Buzz, Steve Johnson, Justin Aker. Glad to have them here every week. Did a good job with you a minute ago, Sully. David Russell here with Little Rock Convention and Visitor Bureau. David, thanks so much for being here and your support. Metters, Adams, and Lee, Andrew Metters and the gang. Make sure if you have any insurance needs, you talk to them first and tell them you heard about it from the Touchdown Club. Epic Health, glad to have Epic Health as our first-year sponsor. Looking forward to having them back next year. Wendy's, I spent some money with Wendy's over the last few days. I do want to thank them for being a sponsor of our two awards, the Hampton Award and the Willie Rofe Award. Look forward to seeing who those winners will be this year. Also, Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings, full-service law firm. The Cliff Harris Award will be getting cranked up here, Rex, in the coming days. I do want to remind you, if you've got an athlete at a college that's getting ready to graduate, or a coach that you know coaches somewhere in the United States that maybe needs some representation, that's what they do. And they are sharp folks, and make sure and give them the opportunity to work with them. Also, again, you can follow them at WLJ Sports Law if you want to follow them on Twitter. So I do want to thank Judy and the entire sports law team. Appreciate you guys being here and your support. Crane Automotive, glad to have them back for a third year. I don't see Drew around here somewhere, but we appreciate them. Go by and see them at one of their dealerships if you have the time, and tell them you heard about them from the Touchdown Club. Thank you, Larry Crane. The Democrat Gazette, Wally and Tabitha, thank you so much for your support. We've got a heck of a high school player of the week, Democrat Gazette High School Player of the Week. He is, you talking about clutch 2 weeks in a row. I mean, national level clutch 2 weeks in a row. I can't wait to introduce him in just a minute. And Lunsford is out being a granddad today. I'm sorry, I used to say great-grandfather. As Susie said, that's hard to believe that Lunsford is a great-grandfather. So, Susie Smith, we're so glad to have you here today, sitting next to Sully, and all the gang from Metropolitan Bank who sponsored us for the last 9 years. Let's give a big round of applause to all of our great sponsors here. We want to thank Wayne, Casey, Brent, and Beth at the Embassy. Thanks so much for you guys do a great job working with us. Thank you for getting the AV set up today. Dwayne Duncan, our super photographer. Thank you, Dwayne. Matt Johnson, who's doing our live streaming. I was going to tell you, if you want to, anybody, if you want to talk to Matt about live streaming, about freelancing, talk to him. If you want to talk to Gary, who's got Pinnacle Communications, does AV, go up and ask him. Or Dwayne Duncan, go up and say, hey, listen, I see what you do at the Touchdown Club. Can we use you? So take advantage of those folks. They're excellent. Kelly, the same great job. Kelly, as always, all the ladies who do our great check-in. We appreciate you. We couldn't do this club without you. And today's a great turnout, and looking forward to hearing what Sully's going to say. As I mentioned, we've got an exceptional player of the week. Now, everybody knows about Greenwood, and we've honored Rick Jones here probably at least 2 times over the last 9 years as our Coach of the Year. Matter of fact, he was the National High School Coach of the Year, I think either a year ago or 2 years ago. The winning streak is up to 47 wins in a row at Greenwood. Yes, that's right. Rick couldn't be here with us today, Coach Jones, but Mona, his wife, is here, and she has not made the other banquets. That I didn't realize this, but Rick's mother had come to those, and Rick's mother loves those kind of banquets, and so she was the one representing with Rick, and so we're glad to have Mona here, as well as Aaron and Greg Haslam, who actually piloted the gang down here from Greenwood so they can make it. But our player of the week, he is a junior. Happens to be, as you figured out by now, the son of Rick Jones and Mona Jones. Is the coach's son. His name is Kevin Jones, and listen to this. He's a wide receiver, kick returner, punter, and place kicker. Now, 2 weeks ago, out of the receiver position, he's 2 for 2 throwing the ball, trick plays for 68 yards. He caught 2 passes for 31 yards. He caught a punt return when needed. He punted the ball twice for a 34.5-yard average. He was 6 of 6 on extra points and kicked a 23-yard field goal on the final play of the game to beat Fort Smith Southside 45-42. to extend the winning streak to 46. Well, he comes back this week, and he kicks 3 field goals, 42 rather, 35. And the last play of the game again, 25-yard field goal to win the game, to keep the streak alive up to 47 games in a row. His mother was telling me he's a fine young man. He's involved with his church, and just a few minutes visit with him, I can tell. So let's give him a Little Rock Touchdown Club welcome. Our player of the week, Kevin Jones from Greenwood. Make sure and give Rick our best, and tell him to keep on winning. Also knows Kevin, speaking of another great coach, Kevin Kelly, who's 2 number 1 teams in the state right here represented today. Kevin, glad to have you here today as always. And Rex did mention, we also have the president of the Arkadelphia Football Club, Touchdown Club. I want to recognize him, Blake Bell. Blake, stand up and let everybody give you a round of applause. They do a terrific job with their club, and I know a lot of folks speak down there, and I've spoken down there before, so great job down in Arkadelphia. And that's Wintertown. That's everybody's winning down there. All right, we got a big weekend in sports to recap. Rex, will you come up and do your job, buddy?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Boy, this is a good crowd.
Yeah, it is.
Of course, Sully made everybody buy a ticket that works for KATV, so that did help a lot. Thanks, guys. We do appreciate that. You know, this is a little difficult. There's not much fun in college football right now here in Arkansas. So I have set something up, David. If this goes particularly bad, Kelly and Popeye are going to give a signal as if they were an Auburn coach, and I'm just going to drop to the ground. And that'll be it. Of course, I realize here I'm kind of mixing my metaphors, so mixing my games, but I was going to tell you the problem is if I drop to the ground, my replacement they send in is Wade Phillips, and it gets even worse after that. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Arkansas loses its 6th consecutive game. That's the longest losing streak in 23 years. If you're counting, that was the start of the glorious Jack Crow era at Arkansas. Auburn, meanwhile, surprise of the SEC. Tigers go to 8-1. Auburn breaks a 2-game losing streak to the Razorbacks. Auburn now 12-10-1 all time against Arkansas. And just think, it started with Bo Jackson running over David Basil in Memphis, the whole series. Or was it the other way around?
A little bit of both.
David posted a picture of him helping Bo up last week, and I reposted it over on my Facebook page. I don't know, David, you may have seen one of the comments was, Bo probably slipped. You know, Gus Malzahn was 0-3 in Fayetteville as an offensive coordinator. He had lost 30-23 at Tulsa in 2008. 44-23 at Auburn in 2009 and 38-14 at Auburn in 2011. Got it done Saturday, though. Also marked the return of Arkansans that are now on the Auburn staff, Tim Horton, J.B. Grimes, Rhett Lashley, a heavy state of Arkansas flavor down there. The other losing streaks for Arkansas of 6 or more games, 3 of them were in the decade of the 1950s. And then the other one, as I mentioned, was in 1990. The 50s overall weren't a very good decade for Arkansas football. Jim, I'm kind of reminded though of the great old Jack Brickhouse line about the Chicago Cubs once. He once said anybody could have a bad century when talking about the Cubs. So just one bad season. It's not going to be a bad decade. Trey Mason, 4 TD runs. That ties the record for the most ever against Arkansas. Tony Temple of Missouri, you might remember, I tried to forget, had scored 4 in the 2008 Cotton Bowl. That was the one game of the great Reggie Herring era as head coach. Arkansas State, though, does get back in the win column, 17-16 down at South Alabama. They could not score at all in 7 first-half possessions. They trailed 6-0 at the half. But the Red Wolves come back in the second half to go to 2-1 in the Sun Belt Conference, 4-4 overall. South Alabama, which is still a relatively new program, 3-4 overall, 1-2 in the conference. Red Wolves went ahead with 6:29 left in the game on a 3-yard run by Sir Gregory Thornton. Now, poor South Alabama, get this, they have lost all 5 of their games by 7 points or less. In fact, the total number of points of those 5 losses, 12. That's got to be tough, but thankfully ASU goes on the road, gets the win in the same stadium where they won the GoDaddy.com Bowl last year. ASU's defense holds South Alabama more than 100 yards below its conference average. And a really disappointing night for UCA down in Natchitoches, Louisiana, which is better known for meat pies than good college football. But the Bears lose to Northwestern State, team that had come in with a record of 3-5. Bears were outgained 438 to 333. Quarterback Ryan Howard, 26 of 43 passing, though, 276 yards in his 3rd start after replacing Winwick Smothers. That defeat drops UCA to 5-4 overall, 2-2 in the conference. They will need to win, with Sully pulling them through their final 3 games to have a shot at another conference title and a 3rd consecutive playoff berth. And it's not going to be easy, because in Conway on Saturday, they play a southeastern Louisiana team that is 7-2 overall, 4-0 in conference, and went into Lake Charles, and thrashed McNeese 41-7, which doesn't happen much. So big test in Conway on Saturday. Elsewhere around Arkansas, Henderson goes to 9-0, 8-0 in the Great American Conference, 37-21 at UAM. Boll Weevils fall to 5-4 and 4-4. Henderson had 5 interceptions in the first half of that game to take a 30-0 lead. Southern Arkansas wins its homecoming game over Ouachita 31-23. Chris Terry, 3 touchdown pass receptions for the Mule Riders. Ouachita is now 6-2. Southern Arkansas is 5-3. Harding goes to 6-2. 42-10 victory at Southeastern Oklahoma. Bison still lead Division II in rushing, 267 yards. They limit Southeastern, get this, to 24 yards on the ground. Arkansas Tech, excuse me, get it out. Stuffed cabbage. Never do that again, David Basil. Right? Thought my 88-year-old mother ordered the menu today when I went through. Not to complain about the food or anything, but stuffed cabbage? All right. Arkansas Tech improved its record to 4-5 with a 26-17 win at East Central Oklahoma. Wonder Boys had 5 interceptions and a fumble recovery. In Division III, Hendricks falls to 3-5. This was the first loss that was really a big margin, 49-20 to the mighty Praying Colonels of Center College in Danville, Kentucky. Now, let's get to the important stuff and the fun stuff. Ivy League football. Andrew Flesher out of Episcopal Collegiate School in Little Rock hits a 23-yard field goal with 48 seconds remaining to lift Harvard past Dartmouth 24-21. Greg Flesher, his dad, of course, is one of our 50-yard line members. How about that? Now, he is a walk-on out of Episcopal Collegiate School. Their starting kicker got injured earlier in the week. A week ago, he was the Ivy League Special Teams Player of the Week. So really great performances by Andrew. Congratulations to him, Greg. Now, on to the SEC. Todd Gurley returns to the Georgia lineup after more than a month away. Scores twice as the Bulldogs win the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, 23-20. They go to 5-3. Florida falls to 4-4. It was Georgia's 3rd consecutive win in the series. Now get this. Will Muschamp, whose veins go out of his neck about that far, I figured out by watching on TV, he is 0-7 in this series. He was 0-4 as a Georgia player. Now he is 0-3 as the Florida coach, and he was screaming at the fans as he left the field. Not a good deal. Gurley, by the way, had 17 carries for 100 yards for Georgia. South Carolina whips Mississippi State by a score of 34-16. I think we may have a chance in Little Rock against State. South Carolina moves to 7-2, 5-2 in the conference. 7th consecutive win in the conference in the series for South Carolina. They now have a home winning streak of 15 games. That's the second longest in the country behind Michigan's 19. Mississippi State falls to 4-4 overall, 1-3 in the conference. Connor Shaw passed for 4 touchdowns in that game for South Carolina. Missouri goes to 8-1 and 4-1, 31-3 in Columbia over a Tennessee team that fell to 4-5 and 1-4. Get this, the Volunteers have lost 19 consecutive road games. Missouri led that one, in fact, 24-3 at halftime. Texas A&M goes to 7-2, 57-7 win over UTEP. Johnny Manziel, 4 touchdown passes. He ran for 2 more. Kentucky, where they're excited because basketball's about to start. They are 2-6, though, in football after a 48-14 win over Alabama State from the SWAC. All right, prime time, CBS, Saturday night, LSU at Alabama. Anybody out there like LSU to go in and get the win in Tuscaloosa?
How about that? 2 of them. 3.
2, 3. How many we got? 3?
Roll the dice.
We'll remember them next week. All right, Auburn at Tennessee, Vanderbilt at Florida, Appalachian State at Georgia, Missouri at Kentucky, Mississippi State at Texas A&M. Arkansas at Ole Miss. Now, about a third of the crowd picked Arkansas over Auburn last week, you remember. That's the glass half full crowd. You know, that's the old joke about the little girl with manure in the room and says, I'm getting a pony for my birthday. But let's try it again. Those are the optimists. Let's try it again. How many of you think Arkansas is going to go into Oxford and get the win on Saturday? All right, about a third. Still good. We'll talk to you next Monday and see how that went. Now, if you stay in the state, it is a cornucopia of college football. Been practicing that word since early this morning. 8 games in the state on Saturday. UAM at Ouachita, SAU at Henderson, East Central Oklahoma at Harding, Southeastern Oklahoma at Arkansas Tech, Rhodes at Hendrix, Grambling, if they show up, at UAPB, ULM at Arkansas State, Southeastern Louisiana at UCA. So you got 2 games in Arkadelphia, 2 games in Conway, a game in Searcy, a game in Russellville, a game in Pine Bluff, and a game in Jonesboro. No excuses. Get out and see some college football on Saturday. Thanks, everybody.
Sully, you can say you spoke on a historic day. Rex, in one weekend recap, used cornucopia, manure, meat pie, and stuffed cabbage, all in his recap. Unbelievable. My goodness. Real quick, Johnny from El Paso, one of our well-known members, asked me to read this real quick. There's a benefit for Houston Cotton, a Bologna senior football player who suffered a serious knee and artery injury during a running play in a game at Wynn earlier this year. He's had 5 surgeries and a lengthy stay at a hospital in Memphis. Thursday, November 7th, at a benefit barbecue dinner to be held at Bologna High School. They're going to do a little fundraiser for him in a silent auction. The cost is $10. I'm sure they can call Bologna for information on that, Johnny. So thanks for saying that. And had 2 good questions last week. You know, I forgot when we were talking about Paul Feinbaum. What was the shot that Feinbaum took at Johnny? Did he say, is he for real? Is that, I can't remember what it was. Did want to say real quick, too, I've got to say congratulations to my girlfriend who hardly ever sees me during the fall because I'm too busy working on touchdown clubs and awards. She sold her business of 13 years, and very proud of her. Let's give her a round of applause, Chantel Kelly. So she is now going to be my sugar mama, and I'm going to be asking her for money and food and all that kind of stuff. But no, congratulations. She puts up with a lot for me being gone and all the time. Also, I know Sully's going to recognize him. The folks from KATV got a great crowd here today. It's been my honor to work with KATV this fall covering the Razorbacks. I want to thank Nick Guinea, and Mark Rose, and Chris Kane, all the guys here, Chris Scott, and Sully. It's been great. I don't know if some of you watched. I'm there Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, and it's been really fun being able to jump back in. And KATV has been so great to the Razorbacks. It's been my honor. And Tony Rancuno, who it's like a new brother to me since I see him every weekend and help him out. So just wanted to say that real quick. Also, Paul Shimura, who's one of our faithful members, who's unofficial mayor of Hot Springs, and he does so much for the community. Paul, thank you for being here tonight. Papa, come on up and say something real quick about Sully and make a presentation. This is like, Sully, this is your life. This is it.
A roast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know everyone's seen the videos. At least I hope you have of Little Stevie football. Everybody, you want to see the videos? Okay. And in recognition for all the years he played football, which I know his wife had mentioned to me several times, that he was very upset that all the trophies he has to give out to everybody else, he's never really received his own. So in honor of Steve Sullivan, Little Stevie Football, we honor you with this trophy. I'm coming.
No, he did not say it. Get out of here.
Thanks, Popeye. Of course, we'll let Jim introduce Sully here in just a second, but let me just say this about my buddy Sully. We created the Sully Award this year that we're going to give the top broadcast play of high school and college to one person because nobody calls a player like Sully. And I just had two quick clips. Gary Underwood, if you would pick those up just to give you a little flavor of what Sully does every Saturday for UCA. This is audio only.
The play fake being chased, throws it underneath the branch and across the 25, first down, 30, 35, 40, he can go all the way. Go Bucks, let's go, 30, 25, 20, he's gonna score! A UCA touchdown! Andy licking his chops back at the 25. You're gonna punt the football. Line drive kick. Dangerous catch at the 30. Going outside 35, has an opening, 40, cuts it across the field, midfield, 45, weaving, 35, 30, Jesse Grandy, you're the man, all the way.
That's why we have created the Sully Award, because nobody, matter of fact, he calls every play that way. It doesn't matter whether it's a touchdown or not. But Sully and I go back to our days at Channel 4. And of course, had some time with him there. And of course, I've known him for so many years. He's an innovator. Jim, I don't know if you've mentioned all this. You're going to mention all of it or not, but so many things. Are you going to mention some of his deals, his innovations? So I'll leave that to you. But not only you're a colleague, Sully, you're a great friend. It's great to, when I have an idea, to come to you and you bounce off your thoughts. And it just...
Put it in today.
Wow. It's great to have a class act like you in this market. Tony, thank you so much for sharing him with all of Arkansas. And Sully, you're the best, and I appreciate you being a friend and a great ambassador for the state of Arkansas. Jim, will you come give him your formal introduction?
Okay, today's guest speaker certainly needs no formal introduction. So in addition to my normal research of facts, I called on Channel 7's Chris Kane to provide me with a little special info about our guest. Most of you are aware that Sully was born and raised in Framingham, Massachusetts. He always wanted to be a sportscaster, and his idol was the legendary play-by-play man of the Boston Celtics, Johnny Most. Sully and his dad would listen to Celtics games, and his dad would tell him that one day he could grow up to be the next Johnny Most. In the summer of 1977, Sully and one of his best friends bought Keen Twister, a greyhound racing dog. Because of this dog, Sully searched for a college with a good broadcasting program, but had to be located near a dog track. He found Arkansas State in Jonesboro, 1,350 miles from home, but only 60 miles from Southland Greyhound Park. It was there that he fine-tuned his craft and worked his way into the radio broadcasting business, reading the news on a morning radio show in Jonesboro. Now, according to Chris Kane, after a brief period, Sully was fired from the job after an editing mishap. Chris suggests that I let Sully explain what happened and how that led to his TV career. What I do know is that Sully's TV career began at KHBS TV in Fort Smith. Then 3 years later, in 1985, Sully started a 13-year stay as a sports anchor at KARK-TV, Channel 4 in Little Rock. In 1998, Sully moved over to KTV, Channel 7 in the sports department, working alongside the legendary Paul Eels. In 2006, after the tragic death of Paul, Sully was named as the sports director at Channel 7, the position that he currently holds. Along with his TV work, Sully has handled play-by-play for various high schools, including Fort Smith Northside, Fort Smith Southside, Benton, and Greenbrier. At the college level, he's been the voice of the Henderson Reddies, the Harding Bisons, the ULR Trojans, Arkansas State University, and the University of Central Arkansas. In addition, as David was alluding to, we know he started Friday Night Touchdowns and then Sully's Little Heroes. Chris gave me too many stories for me to include them all, and he even said he sent me an email this morning. I couldn't get on my computer at home this morning, and he had several more from Dale Nicholson Jr., but I'm going to share one with you. First, let me ask, how many of you are familiar with Jimmy Lee, who calls in on the buzz? Talks so fast no one can understand him. Okay, you know about Jimmy Lee. Chris tells me that Sully has a heart of gold. Many stories would confirm this fact, and here's one. Back when Sully was the voice of the ASU Indians, as they were called a few years ago, Jimmy Lee wanted to see a game in person. Since Jimmy Lee can't drive, Sully drove him up to Jonesboro for a game. Can you imagine listening to Jimmy Lee for 2 hours each way to Jonesboro and back? And not only that, Sully let Jimmy Lee watch the game up in the press box and even introduced him to the ASU president. Many such stories could be told that would confirm that Sully truly has a heart of gold. In closing, let me say that Sully has been named Arkansas Sportscaster of the Year 3 times and won the AP Best Sportscast 13 times. 2 years ago, the Arkansas Activities Association honored him with its Distinguished Media Member Award. And I have a program here in my hand which shows that on July the 20th, 1913, Steve Sullivan was inducted into the Arkansas Sportscasters and Sports Writers Hall of Fame. So now, here's Sully.
Thank you. It's a little bit surreal to have Jim do that intro. I sit out there and wonder every week, does Rex have a real job? I don't know how he does it, and Baz is simply the best. I've not had a better friend. I'm kind of a nervous guy when it comes to ideas, and he's been the steadying force. And when I looked at my name on the list, and he asked me at first, started looking down there, and I saw, Brett Bielema, the Cowboys. I said, what's he thinking? The good news, it was 13 weeks away. And I look at that Razorback schedule, and it's Alabama next year, it's LSU, it's Ole Miss, and Nicholls State is coming probably to Little Rock. So, Nicholls State right here. You got to know who you are. Popeye, they don't get any better than Popeye. And he was on a mission for 13 weeks. He said he'd have that limousine here, and he said he'd fill it. I don't know how many trips to Channel 7 and Mark Rose's office he made, but he pulled them in. And his last trip was to my house to make sure my wife Tony got here. And she heard I was speaking to the Touchdown Club, and she heard me brag about all the great speakers and said, boy, I'm scared. I think of those numbers and how long I've been in the business, 30 years. And Justin Akery just asked me what are some of the great highlights. And I've been blessed to experience some great moments, and you don't appreciate them fully while you're going through them. But I go back to 1994 and 95. Went to every stop of the way when the Razorbacks won the national championship, then went back to the championship game. And what a unique team. Nolan Richardson was a unique man with a unique style. We had one star player on those teams, Corliss Williamson. And I was talking to Mike Anderson last year, and I said, have you ever thought, when you've gone on from coaching, that may never happen again? And how special that was to watch them. And college basketball's changed. And you go back when they beat that North Carolina team, Arkansas was not playing well in 1995 in the tournament. They were getting lucky at each stop. And I looked at that North Carolina team, and I saw Rasheed Wallace, and I saw Jerry Stackhouse, and I said, no way. Arkansas beat North Carolina. I won't mention what happened in the other game. That's obviously one of the highlights. And the big thrill for me as a sportscaster is sharing something you haven't seen. And the more spectacular, the more fun. And I go back to many years ago when I was at Channel 4, and I was looking for a story, and a guy told me to go to Russellville. There was this phenom. This is before they did all these stories on 6th graders and 7th graders. And said, you got to see this kid. So I go into Gardner Junior High, and I see 2 men going one-on-one. And one was Corliss Williamson. In 8th grade, he was 6'6". So I'm saying, wow. And it gets into perspective when you see the other 8th and 9th graders. And kids back then weren't as big as they are now, and they were like little kids. And then he goes up and shatters the backboard. I don't think it's ever happened again, and I am so all over the place that I never saved the video. And but hopefully Corliss has it. But what a great moment, and that's something that stick with me the rest of my life. And this third thing, Rob Thomas is head of our promotions department. And he came up to me last year and he said, we have a promotional campaign and we're gonna make you a high school football star. He said, would you be all right with that? And I was deep down saying, yeah. The bigger, the better. And so what I didn't know, I didn't see it till it was a finished product, and they went to my all-time favorite coach. They searched video, and they made it almost, and I guess it is, believable. I want you to show you a little Stevie football if you haven't seen it.
World, Steve Sullivan was the Johnny Football of his time. A lot of people referred to him as Stevie Football. Steve actually rushed one year for over 5,000 yards. He had a sprained ankle at that time, or I think he'd had a real good year.
High school football in Arkansas, Steve Sullivan, and Friday night touchdowns.
Yeah. Great job. We have another one with Keith Jackson. After we saw Keith Jackson, I said, who's next? I was enjoying them so much, but it's been so much fun. My mother-in-law wasn't sure if it was real. Christina Munoz thought it was real. And I've gotten to the point where I've enjoyed it so much. We have the sweetest people who clean the building, Arthur and his wife, Betty. And Arthur came up to me the other day and said, Betty was so excited to see your career. And I thought about it and I said, why ruin it for her? And I really hesitate when they email me. Some people have searched my bio and they played for Jimmy Red Parker and they have, said, I don't remember you. And, it really takes a while before I tell them it's not real. But anytime I get a Benton Harmony Grove highlight, I make sure to point out my former coach. And, but I came from Massachusetts, hit the jackpot with parents. They have a unique story. Both my parents grew up in Ireland. Didn't learn much about their background growing up because you're busy with your own life. But they were 16, 17 years old, and they decided their future was so desperate that they were going to take a bag of belongings, get on a boat, and go for a better life. And they ended up in the United States, in Boston. And my dad always thought that the path to a better life was a good education. In Ireland, they were only allowed to go to 8th grade. And so my passion, you never know, you can do this, you can know this as parents or grandparents, you never know the interest a kid is gonna have when he's growing up. 6 in my family, I am the only one into sports, and I was just overboard. I mean, I just, to where it wasn't healthy. I learned to divide like in the 2nd grade because I want to figure out the batting averages of the 1967 Red Sox and how they did it. When a guy batted .333, I want to know how they came to that number. On a paper route, I don't know if those people liked me, but it was a different era. It was when people got to know their paper boy. And someone, I thought they liked me. My parents thought maybe they just dumped these on me, but they gave me 3 roosters. I thought they were baby chickens. I had no idea. They started crowing. My dad told me that roosters fight, so I named them. The big one, George Foreman. The middle one was Muhammad Ali. And the third one, the little one, was Joe Frazier. So you give an idea of where where I was as far as a sports fan, over the top. But let's fast forward. I'm in high school. I'm not a great baseball player, and I want to stay in sports. And my dad was desperately wanting to win. We didn't have a lot of money for 6 kids. My dad worked in a factory. My mom worked 10 to 6 in the morning as a nurse's aide. There were 6 of us. So any money we could scrape up for college would be good. So my dad was desperately, he worked at Denison Manufacturing Company. They had a scholarship, a few scholarships. And we had been shut out in the first 2. And his goal with one of those 6 kids was to win that scholarship. I had about a B average, but I said, I don't think my chances are very good. He said, no, he said, you're gonna go in there and tell them you're gonna be the future voice of the Boston Red Sox. You're gonna give them a home run call. It's June, the Red Sox are playing good, and you're gonna win that scholarship. And guess who won the Denison Manufacturing Scholarship? So when you get that kind of belief, and I've learned in this business, all it takes is one person to believe in you. So then I decided to pursue a broadcasting career. Jim mentioned, I had a buddy call me. He was an assistant at a Greyhound park for a trainer, and the dog got its muzzle off and things got ugly. The guy was gonna kill the dog. And the guy said, no, I wanna buy it. So he calls me one night, if you have $400, we can go half and half on a Greyhound. So I say, we can make thousands. So I say, why not? So I start searching for, you can get two of the things right. It had to be close to a racetrack, it had to have radio TV, and it had to be cheap. So I had never been outside of Massachusetts. And sight unseen, I end up in Jonesboro, and real quick I tried to, the one thing you come from New England, it's runna, and fada. I quickly dropped my G's and went running, fishing. Quick story about that. My daughter was in AP English, and she's a native Arkansan, but she put in one of her papers, and my wife was perusing the paper, she put fixin' in. She said, what about this? My daughter said, well, I'll do fixin' too. True story, that did happen. Ended up in Jonesboro. You think you're pretty good getting out of college, and had one offer, and it was morning news, and it was probably the lowest possible job you could have at a radio station. I was doing play-by-play. I got the first play-by-play job, which is definitely my passion, for Fort Smith Christian High School, and one of the guys in the basketball team was Gus Malzahn. He was actually the star of the team, and of course with Gus on the team, you win. So Fort Smith Christian Eagles, and I was doing news updates on old 8-track tapes. And you could put multiple newscasts on the tape, but if you mess up, you have to start all over. And I was going to play golf that afternoon, and I think I could fit 6 on there. I got 5 done, and if anybody knows me, I don't swear very often. And I got to the 5th one, and I messed up a word. I repeated that word 30 times and said, oh, the worst possible word you can think of. Wheel of Fortune, you'd have no problem finding it. It's F and it's 4 letters. Oh yeah, it was bad. So the guy that was working behind me said, no problem. He said, I'll just fast forward through that and we'll run your first 5. Didn't happen. So I get called in, you're making $800 a month and no one knows who you are. And, I was lucky, my boss was an eccentric millionaire. He brought me in, I'm scared to death, Bob Hernreich. He actually owns part of the Sacramento Kings now. But he says, we had about 35 calls, and it was music of your life. I mean, it was 30s, 40s music. It was 3 in the afternoon. And he said, we had 35 people that were just totally appalled. He said, and the one lady that enjoyed it, we prefer she not listen to our station. So he said, this is important. He goes, but out of the 35 people that called, not one mentioned you by name. You were just a voice doing the news. So he said, obviously I can't put that voice back on the news radio, but I want to move you over to the TV part. So I don't know how that launched the career, but 3 years, and I got a chance to go to Channel 4. That was the heyday of Little Rock TV, and I worked with the greatest people at Channel 4, greatest mentors ever, when you had Roy Mitchell, Carolyn Long, Tom Bonner, Dave Woodman. It was just us, and they started, knew we couldn't beat the Razorbacks. Paul had the Razorbacks over at Channel 7, so my passion was high school football, and they started Friday night flights over there. We put a big 300-pound guy in a helicopter, and he was like a WWF wrestling star, and had these young photographers, and we had so much fun on Friday nights, and it kind of collided with the time where there was Basile Shabazz at Pine Bluff, there was Madre Hill at Malvern. We had all these great players, and it was just, I had a blast, and stayed there for 14 years, and then probably the greatest thing that was going on at that time, it was like Channel 7 and Channel 4 were like the Hatfields and the McCoys. Yeah. It was, and if I can steal your anchor, I'm going to do it. And Barry Brandt and I got thrown a life raft, and Channel 4 was heading down. We got to go over to Channel 7. And I'll be honest with you, when I first made the move to Channel 7, it had nothing to do with Paul Eels. It was all about getting to do more sports. But the first year, I had to sit out, which is hard to believe. They actually had a year non-compete, but I was kind of Paul Eels' photographer. So I'd go every place with Paul, and he'd make me feel like the most important guy from Channel 7 that was on the assignment. And I could say, you can go over and over about Paul, and one thing he'd say, I watch Channel 4, and he would say at the end of every newscast, have a great, safe rest of the night. And I really look at him, and some things people say on TV, they say it because it sounds good and it'll resonate well. And I get over to Channel 7, I think he really believed that every time he said it, and that was just so genuine. And in a business that you can get wrapped up in yourself and seeing promos like Stevie Football and stuff like that, Paul was always about the other guy. And if I had one great contribution at Channel 7, when I started anchoring, I started on Monday nights running Paul's calls. And Paul said, "You don't have to do that." And I said, "Paul, I'm making my show better." I said, "It's your call." But nobody, I guess no Arkansas touchdown was complete until you listened to how Paul called the touchdown. And even when he was fading a little in his later years, no one got a team to the end zone better than Paul. I think he had all the elements you wanted a great play-by-play guy. Not only had a great voice, and I think for a home team, and this is something that I think you got to have a great passion for not only the sport, your team, and they came out in their touchdown calls. I want to start one clip from Paul. He had 2 words that could raise the spirits of an entire state. We haven't heard them too much this year, but if you're going to run. Little time between each clip here. Most anxious time in TV.
Guys, before we start our meeting, you all know the voice of the Razorbacks, Paul is. He's just got a few things to say to you. Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate it. Guys, I've got just one thing I want to say to you. Touchdown, Arkansas!
And I also picked 2 calls from Paul, and as you watch this first call, I want you to think of it as a broadcaster, and I think the goal of a play-by-play guy is to create a visual picture of what's going on, and then describe the play, and get the emotion right. And what I struggle with sometimes in my calls is clarity at the end of calls. You know, one thing, Paul would keep the emotion and keep it under control. I get so emotional that by the end, it's like, boy, if you just turned on, you think, what the heck is going on? You know something big happened, you don't know exactly what happened. But I have 2 of my favorite Paul's calls here. And the first one, just listen to the emotion, maybe to the exact detail going and describing, and say if you're listening on the radio. And it's the Sterner to Lucas play.
Lucas and Smith, who made that great catch, split wide to the left. Cobb's your tailback. Pointer steps off the line of scrimmage. 2nd and 8, Arkansas at the Tennessee 23-yard line. Pointer's in motion. Sterner, play action. Looking, punts, throws down the middle. Touchdown! Arkansas! Oh my! Lucas goes up, makes the catch, and the Hogs take the lead in this ball game, 27-24.
Jones now throwing to the end zone, and it is complete! I can't believe it! 31 yards to Detroit Birmingham in the back of the end zone.
All right. And nothing was ever planned with Paul. I mean, that was just to get the pure emotion, and that was at the back end, 1999, of his play-by-play, and he was still that good. All right, I think you're under an influence when you're a play-by-play guy of where you grow up, and the guy you listen to when you grow up. And I was thinking if I grew up on the West Coast, or maybe it's in the middle of the United States, it might be Jack Buck, and I might be a different announcer. I want to play a guy now that I think is the all-time best, and I think I'd be a different broadcaster if I grew up listening to this guy all the time. I should have put it much later.
And a high fly ball into deep left center. Havana, Cuba has arrived. And we have a 5-5 tie. And the fly ball to deep right, blanks to the track. It is gone. He has hit another one. Que viva Cuba. Viva Queen. Dodgers, can you believe it?
Imagine what a pleasure listening to someone like that call games. Now the next guy you're going to hear, and there's a little space between this one, and he is from a totally different style of broadcasting, but I revered him growing up, and he's a Boston icon, and I thought he was the greatest thing ever. I was really disappointed. I saw him at a barbershop one time that it was like, that's the guy I wish I had never seen him. The way he acted there, but just his emotion, and he was our guy.
Hi there, sports fans. This is Johnny Most reporting for the Boston Sullivan.
And we're starting to see the bang stuff now. Rodman is all over. There is a violent knockdown by Lambier. Oh, my. A completely unnecessary foul by Lambier, and he has the audacity to complain about something. All the dirty ball club, and I can see why. This is a typical disgusting display by Rodman, Lambier, and Isaiah Thomas. The yellow, gutless way they do this here. Now the other Lord Fauntleroy's coming in, the other good guy coming in, Rick Mahorn, the guy who hit people from behind. I have a great deal of contempt and disrespect for this black guy. White, he took it bird. It was Dennis Rodman, and he sneers. He didn't do it because he's a good boy. He wouldn't do something nasty like that. Dennis Rodman did not incur my respect anyway. In fact, tell that to these miserable Detroit media people. Well, fine, I'll be a journalist. I'll be myself. I wouldn't be like them for all the money in the world.
There he is. And unfortunately, my wife said, man, he's mean. And I said, no, he's just passionate. And I had a Johnny Most moment last Saturday when UCA got a few calls and bad calls, and I didn't want to mock him, but it was just kind of like insult on top of injury, and the official was announcing the last penalty, and he was stuttering, getting it out, and I kind of continued his pattern before it got back to me, and it was not a good moment, but it was kind of like instincts, the Johnny Most instincts took over. I see Kevin Jones here. My passion's high school football. Love high school football. Don't love Greenwood, but I love high school football. Oh yeah, his dad's a great coach. I mean, they aren't just extending that winning streak, they're beating big 7A schools, which they shouldn't have to do. I'd get in that another time, but I have so much fun on Friday nights, and I've kind of taken a different tilt. Every Friday, my goal is to, I don't care where you're from, is to make that, if you're watching all three stations and you score a touchdown on each station, that your best touchdown is going to be on Channel 7. Because it may be your only one. If I can find a blocker in front of a guy running, that I can mention his name, it's some thought goes into each particular highlight. And it's sometimes a challenge to get the names right. And they'll spell them in just these ways that there's no way you can, I can't determine what they are. And I'll go to my coworkers for help. And years ago, it was Pine Bluff, a guy returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, and he spelled his name Dedetron. And I'm thinking it's not Dedetron. I don't know what to call him, and there's no one to call. And this was before Facebook and Twitter, and 2 kickoffs for touchdowns. And Barry Brandt, greatest assist ever. He goes, why don't you just call him the D-Train? So we never even worried about getting his name right. He was the D-Train. And then I had an El Dorado here recently, and it was Marque. And I was thinking, he's a tailback, and he scored 3 touchdowns in the highlights. And I think it can't be Marque. And so I just went with, and I said, how do you spell a touchdown in El Dorado? Marque. Yeah, it was Mark, is the name. And I'll give you a challenge on trying to make it a big moment was, and we try to pick the games, you'll see they're strategically picked by who cares about their game and what are the most important to our viewing area. So you're going to see a lot of games from around Pulaski County. You're going to see Bryant and Benton, who really care about their football, Conway and Cabot, But by virtue of being, some guys got to pick up 2 games. Gene is here, one of our photographers. You got to pick up a game on the way back. So someone's had to go last Friday night. It was North Pulaski against McClellan, both 0-8. So someone had to win. Number 22 made 2 incredible runs for North Pulaski. They had a handwritten roster. We couldn't figure out what the name was. We had all sorts of people just trying to put our heads together. He's got 2 touchdowns. So we went on Facebook and got his name right. And I think it was Shalise something. But I made the biggest deal out of that kid's 2 runs because I figured at North Pulaski at 0-9, this is it. This is it. This is the last time he's going to get a shot to be on. But I was looking the other day at most viewed videos over the weekend, and it was North Pulaski McClellan. He may have watched it 3,000 times, but it's more than any other video. But you just never know. And as far as sports now and how it's changed over the years, I don't like some things that have happened in major college football. I remember years ago the contact you had with coaches. Danny Ford one time at practice, someone probably doesn't know this, he had Paul Ears make a beer run during practice one time. True story. He did a coach's show Paul did one time with Eddie Sutton in a hot tub. Nolan Richardson let us in the locker room for every Razorback basketball game, Channel 7, for every Razorback basketball game with the mic on. And you just don't get that kind of contact right now. We're paying these coaches, it's getting ridiculous money, and I just think the more you pay coaches money-wise, the more you could lead to corruption and want to keep those jobs. And I think the transparency is gone. They kind of feed you what they want from the university, almost like propaganda, and I don't see that changing, which is kind of a sad deal. On the plus side, I know they're going through a bad time, but I love Coach Bielema. The times I've dealt with him, I almost compare him a little to Nolan Richardson. He's a guy who won previously at the places he was, Wisconsin, and Nolan had a great history. He's very honest, and Nolan was very honest to a fault, and in a way, Bielema can be honest to a fault. Some of the stuff he tweets, but I think he's genuine as far as you're going to get for these coaches these days, has a great plan, and I really think he's going to win. It's really tough right now because we're making fundamental mistakes, not looking good, and no one is more frustrated than him. But when I see those 6'10" offensive linemen that are freshmen, I see Hunter Henry, I see Jonathan Williams, I see Alex Collins. I think this is going to be a great future at the University of Arkansas. I don't know where at time-wise. I've babbled long enough.
Not here. If you got any questions for Sully, let's throw it up for just a couple minutes. But I want to say this real quick. Sully's responsible for doing the Landers Award, Sully's Little Heroes, as you mentioned, Jim mentioned Friday Night Flights. But I had to mention Sports Week, just because a couple things. Now, Sully to me reminds me of Gus Malzahn a little bit. Sully on the outside is all nice and calm and all this. But back in the day when we had Friday Night Flights and we were at Channel 4, he turned into an animal about from 10 o'clock because, again, you were trying to get your scores in. But you talk about an intense guy, but did an amazing job in just trying to get scores, trying to put names together. Fantastic. And then when we would do Sports Week every week, Sully would come in and he would stir it up between me and Bruce. He was going to make sure that there was somewhere we're going to say something that would get up to U of A for them to call and complain. So I did want you, Sully, maybe talk about what your idea was in making that show happen.
Yeah, the wildest deal was Sports Week, and it was a ratings hit. I mean, it did Oprah numbers at 10:30. It was actually Bob Steele was the news director at that time. We came with an idea for 10:30. It was capitalizing on the passion of Razorback football. And it was supposed to be Baz and Patrick Williams, a former Razorback. And a week before the show, he moves back to Houston. So we have to find someone. And he says, my insurance guy. And Baz has always steered me in the right direction. Chris Kane, intern, Jeff Lawrence with fitness. I can thank every guy he's given me. So I said to Bob, let's give it a chance. And I didn't know the history. I didn't know Bruce James was even a football star. And he comes in, and that chemistry, they just knocked it out of the park. And they did. We got calls from Mr. Nutt. And the saddest thing about it was the show, sure, it was negative when things were going bad, but it was at its best ratings when things were going good. And if you're a fan, I think you have the right to be frustrated when they're playing bad. You're so heavily invested. Great thing, Joe Hollis was former coach at Arkansas State. I asked him about all the criticism he was getting, and he said, there's a reason they pay football coaches this obscene amount of money. He said, it's not like fixing a car. It's not like doing surgery. He said, you can sit in the stands and see we aren't blocking. You can sit in the stands and see our quarterback's not playing well. You can be an expert in the stands and be heavily invested. And that's part of the reason you're going to get that criticism. I think a show like Sports Week, I'd be disappointed if it wasn't successful, because that would reflect on it wasn't a passionate fan base. But the two guys made it work, and it was so much fun, and I really wish we had an avenue for it now. What they did actually is they kind of ran a little blocking move, is they moved the coaches show, which I think is too late, an hour to 10:30, 11:30. But they figured Sports Week would at least start around 11:30 if they moved the coaches show. So things happen, and maybe they happen for a reason, a good thing. But I think we'd be having fun this season trying to analyze, and they're both big Bielema guys, and it wouldn't be too negative. But it was a chapter I really enjoyed. And I did stir it up. I'd look for the most controversial thing to start the show. And sometimes, true story, they would leave the 30 minutes, and it'd be pretty tense. I'd be wondering if they were, going to talk to each other. I mean, it got really heated, and it wasn't theater, it was real feelings. Baz, I know, would recover. I was really worried about Bruce so much. But they become great friends, and I'm just really sorry it had to end, and they still do commentary. It's been now 13 years running, and it's been so much fun with those guys.
Any questions?
Well, there we go.
Johnny.
This is another honor. Johnny from El Paso.
Steve, can you tell, well, first off, I'd love to hear you talk about the time you had the opportunity to go to Tulsa. If you could repeat that story, that'd be great. And also, talk about the time you were at Channel 4 and some people from Channel 7 sent tapes of you to another market.
Well, I didn't know that, but I mean, I think I don't know where Johnny is. Unbelievable. The one job I almost took was to Tulsa. I was working at Channel 4 in weekends, and they asked me to send, this is how stuff happens, asked me to send a Friday night tape. Then they asked me to send another Friday night tape. Obviously, high school football was important to them. And then they offered the job, and the money was so ridiculously more than I was making that I think something was going wrong. And it was that my news director at that time, Bob Steele, told them I was making a lot more than I was. And I really didn't leave, so I really didn't want to leave, so I go to our news director, our general manager at Channel 4, and I say, hey, if you can go somewhere in the middle there, we'd be all fine here, and I'll stay. He said, nah, I really like you, but we aren't going there. And it was kind of the Ron Burgundy time of TV where the anchors even sports anchors, did a lot of reading. It was sports producers. I would write the shows for Dave mainly, or Wendell Stacy, who was a great aide to me over the years at Channel 4, would write the show. And that's when we were really hitting hard with Friday night touchdowns. I got a call late one night, and Dave Woodman asked, have you signed anything? He said, no. He said, there's no way if you leave, I'm doing that Friday night show. I'm getting out of this. There's no way. He said, so you hold on. And he said, I think it's a good time for me to get out of sports. So he actually made the segue to the news department, and I went to sports, and it was nothing near financially what I would have made at Tulsa, but it was by far the best move I ever made in my life. I mean, as far as staying. You won't find a better ambassador for the state of Arkansas. I may be from Massachusetts, but I'm an Arkansan, and that's what I feel. I've had just love the emphasis of high school football and college football. The weather, the cold weather brings the worst out in cars, people. It's just overrated up there. And they butcher the language just as bad in the Northeast as they do down here. And as far as, what was the other question?
Yeah, I read this in the Democrat Gazette. When you were at 4, some representatives from 7 actually...
I think they helped me out because the Tulsa station that offered me was the affiliate of Channel 7, was KTUL, so I should thank them. They hired me again.
Any other questions? Great job, Steve Sullivan. Let's hear it for Sully. Great job, Sully. Very entertaining. Thanks for being here, everybody. Roller Sales and Mike Forte next week. Come up, get your picture made with Sully.
That was fun.